Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Today we're going to have a look at something I've not really explored in great detail, limited companies. Can you claim your name as a limited company? And what is it, the law of commerce? Well, I've got a gentleman waiting in the wings to come and tell us all about that and how it can be beneficial to us, ordinary, everyday people. His name is Dave Witcher and he joins me now. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Richard. Nice to see you, and thank you for having me on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. And we're going into different territory from the sort of normal lawful legal stuff that I've gone into with many guests in the past. And so talking about things like limited companies, claiming your name, and the law of commerce, and maybe other things as well. That is, of course, assuming that the big bully boys don't come and pound my door and take my van before we finish recording. There's always that option. Dave, so lovely to have you on. Maybe tell us a little bit about
Thank you.
yourself, and
Yeah.
then tell us, get us on about claiming your name and limited companies.
Right. Well, about 14 years ago, Richard, I found myself in a bit of a situation with Her Majesty's Revenues, Customs and Collections. And they took me into a room and it was very bullyish. It was very fascist. And I thought something's adrift here. I'm not enjoying this interaction. So
No, sure.
as I left the room after they properly violated me, they said, actually, you're not leaving the building. And I said, well, that's great. I love steak dinner. So let's get some steak on. And they were screaming and shouting. So anyway, to cut a long story short, as I walked out, I said to them, I don't understand how you get control over us. But once I do, I will, people like me are gonna change this world. We're not gonna put up with you people no more. So I started on a very long journey 14 years ago. I used to sit up till 6 in the morning watching live streams, and I wanted to find out kind of what the truth was, who I was, and basically what I wasn't. So we studied law for many years, the common law, all the natural law elements, maritime law, you name it, all of the laws. And whenever we were going into courtrooms, and I used to go to the Royal Courts of Justice, challenge many of the masters and the judges up there. I actually closed courtroom 37 down many years ago. I took 40 people with me, and they come and met me, and they locked the doors and wouldn't let us back in. And I was literally banging on the doors, calling them cowards and saying, come back and face a man. So I've always known my true core and who I am from deep within, but it wasn't working. I found it wasn't working. And many of us, we've had, some good wins. I did a TV documentary many years ago with Channel 4 called Battling the Bailiffs. And you can see that on YouTube and on ITV. I think the Channel 4 player, you can see that. So I've always loved people. I've always wanted people to be free, to be happy. But then we stumbled across commercial law and the commercial maxims. And then a friend of mine actually looked into how MPs were operating. And we come across Tony Blair Limited, Boris Johnson Limited. And we thought, well, hang on a minute, what are they up to? So the actual limited companies they've got are set up as dormant companies. So they're not actually, they're always trading, they're always active with Companies House, but they're not doing anything. They're just like a vessel that they hide behind. So we thought, well, we'll do some of that. So a friend of mine from the Hornsey Wood Academy, Carl, he decided to follow suit, and he did. And many of us have done this, and we do get different responses now from bailiffs and the system when you let them know that the legal name, as you know, you've covered it much with regards to the birth certificate name. We've actually made that the limited company now, and we're seeing really, really dramatic results with it.
And when you say dramatic results, what do you mean?
So about 4 months ago, a friend of mine in Wales, his wife actually, she's in the police, and she's challenging the system. She doesn't actually want to be in the police anymore. Police are leaving in their droves from the job. But he actually got his car clamped. And a year before, he got another car clamped, and that was taken. That was taken to a compound, never to be seen again. Well, this time round, my friend was having a conversation with the bailiff at the bailiff's fan window. And the bailiff was, no, I'm not having none of this. And he wound his window up. So I said to my friend, are you near a printer? And he said, I can be, Dave. So I said, go and print off your limited company title deed. So he printed it off. He took it back to the bailiff. He put it with his hand up against his window, and the bailiff read it. He wound his window down, took it. He went 20 minutes later. Now he come back at 5:30 the next morning and removed the clamp, and we've not heard from that bailiff since.
Wow. So what had happened
because,
then? Yeah.
So what we believe is, well, not what we believe. I think what we know to be true is that the certified copy of an entry birth certificated name, in its first instance, it's not complete because box 10 has got a line for it. So that's a very interesting thing. It's not a proper recording, because they're recording you. They've cut you from your umbilical, your placenta, and they've recorded you to the dead entity. And you touched on the fact that the birth certificate is a death certificate and that a child could be stillborn. Well, that's exactly what's happened. So that name is always floating around in commerce for anyone to come and have a dabble with a mortgage company, councils, etc., etc. But actually, when you claim that name, you've moved into a different jurisdiction. You've moved into England and Wales. You're no longer in the UK corporation. And we had a gentleman that had a driving offence, and this must have been got to be 6 months ago now. And he stood in the court, and he really didn't say much, but he gave the clerk a copy of his limited company title deed. The clerk then passed that to the CPS, and the CPS, after a few minutes, said, "We are withdrawing." And now I always pay attention to the word, Richard, because words, as we know, they're very powerful in their system. And someone from the CPS, after being questioned by the magistrates on the bench and the clerk of the court, "Why are you withdrawing?" The CPS said, "This one is not a custodian. You're not a custodian anymore because you've claimed the vessel, you've put the vessel in dry dock, and it's a very powerful move." It's really good. It's really good. You'll silence a lot of bailiff companies, because when you actually analyse what bailiff companies are, you only have to go through the paperwork that they slip through your front door. And at the bottom in the small print will be a limited company number. So you go online, you find the limited company number, you find the people in the positions, and that's all they are, Richard. They're just limited companies. That's what they are.
But it doesn't stop them wanting to remove your vehicle or clamp it or, come into your house and take stuff from you if they've got it into their mind that that's what they're going to do, acting for their client as the one that's dealing with me. It's well, we're just acting for the client, as if that was.
So that's where the commercial maxims come in, and the commercial maxim, which can't be broken, clearly states that somebody can't act through another. If you act through another, you actually act yourself. So if you're acting on behalf of a director, of a council or a bailiff company, and you are the bailiff doing that, you cannot be exonerated for your performance because you're doing it through another. So you have the liability for that. The commercial maxims are very, very, very powerful. It clearly states in the commercial maxims that everybody is equal in the law. Now, look, Richard, when the law was formed, because I've studied it for years, and back in the day, we used to duel with people. We'd have swords and gunfights, single shot, and justice was seen to be delivered to whoever survived the bloodbath. And then we moved into this sort of civil thing. Well, let's do things, nicely, where we're not taking cutlasses to each other. So this is when the law really sort of took a grip. But we all have to be equal, whether you're a road sweeper, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a judge. No one's above the law, and that's the commercial maxim. So when you bring these commercial maxims into court, they can't just turn around and say that's conspiracy theory, that common law. We don't go by that no more. No, you're actually holding their feet to a fire that they can't escape because it's their fire. You
Right.
know, we're all led to believe that these buildings are our buildings, and they are. And you know, when you get a court say the court's made an order, well, buildings can't speak, and buildings, if they believe a building can speak and make an order, they really ought to go and see a doctor and have a mental
Yes.
health check. You know, and when you look at the birth certificate, it's a fragment in time. They've got dates on them, the born date, the birth date, but there's still a fragment in time. And what they're actually celebrating is your demise. They're celebrating your death because you can only ever be all present and correct. You can't be if a policeman pulls you over and says date of birth, and you give him a date that's 60 years ago. Well, he's celebrating your death right at that moment. If you just let them know, actually, no, I'm all present and correct, mate, from fertilization to last breath. That because we come into our mother's waters and womb 280 days before we entered this world, although we wasn't physically in the world because we hadn't come out of our mother's water yet. But actually, when we was in the womb, that's 280 days before. So yeah, dates, all they're doing is celebrating birthdays and stuff. Is you're just celebrating your own demise, really, your twin brother that doesn't exist, the person.
So, but I mean, okay. So, how does that stop them? I mean, if a policeman stops me and says, "What's your date of birth?" Because you know I need to identify for whatever reason, and I say, "Well, I'm all present and correct. You don't need to know that." They're just going to get a little bit more arsey with me, aren't they?
I think a lot of this comes down to your intent. It comes down to your intent, and you have to. There's actually a law in the commercial maxims that says if it's the measure of selflessness. So if you're not prepared to sacrifice yourself for what you believe in and what you stand for and to protect your property, you have no right to it. When bailiffs come to my door, I tell them, look, I'm not playing your game. I don't understand none of your stuff. And if you want to come and breach my peace, then there's potentially going to be a lot of trouble because I'm not prepared to tolerate that because you don't own me. And then a lot of them, because I took many attacks years ago, I decided to play the nicely route. And then there's a few occasions where I decided to go on the attack. And what I did find was actually when I went on the attack back in 2013 with a bailiff called Mark Thompson, I told him because he put this thing through the door, said, if I see you out on the road in your motor, I'm going to arrest you and put you into prison. So I said, Mark, with the greatest of respect and peace to you, if you come near me and touch me, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you. And because I'm not prepared for you to be a slave. And as we know, slavery is abhorrent and odious in all forms. There was a fabulous case many years ago, Cruden versus Neil, and it says that every man is independent of all the laws external from the laws prescribed by nature. And that's Cruden versus Neil in 1796. Yeah, all right, it's a long time ago. But we are, as men and women, and we find it hard to make this distinction. We think we're pieces of paper. We get any title, Mr., Mrs., Miss, Doctor, Reverend. It's just they're just dead entities, Richard. They're not real, are they? You know, we want the
No,
truth, and the
but it doesn't
truth
stop them
is
taking your
the
vehicle,
truth
though. I
is
mean,
the truth. And no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think it all comes down to, like I say, your intent, your barking. If you contact the police prior, your chief constables, and put them on, like I say, we're at a point where if they want to ignore the law, and there was a man put in prison not too long ago, Richard, for taking a knife to a bailiff. But we don't know know the situation with that guy. We don't know if that motor is, if he don't work, he don't put food on the table. And he took a knife to the bailiff, and the bailiff's going, mate, don't stab me. I'll take the clamp off. And the guy sadly got sent to prison for a little while. But that comes down again to one of your previous videos, Troll by Jury, people that know you, your circumstances. I think we're all being pushed too far. I think many years ago, the system, we didn't overly take too much notice of it in the 70s and stuff. It was, people never moaned about the price of food or the price of rent or the price of gas. They just got on with it. And as long as they was happy, they were happy in that function. But now, I spoke to a debt collector for an energy company, and I spoke to this woman about 3 weeks ago, and I said, it's coming for you. She said, oh, I've already had the knock at the door by the bailiffs. And I was like, my goodness, you're working for a debt collection department in an energy company, and you yourself have had a visit from a bailiff. You can't make this up, Richard. It's shocking.
So this only is going to scare people, isn't it? I mean, the fact that in the end, what you said to me is that, well, you can do all these tactics, but that, if you attack them, you go to prison. They're going to get your vehicle anyway because they're just not obeying the law. And even the bailiffs are having bailiffs at their door. This is not a very positive and helpful sign for people to think, well, what are we going to do then?
I think through desperate times are coming. You know that. You feel it. I think we're all feeling it as a people. The system, they're opening gambit, the Bill of Rights, which is, it don't apply to us men and women. It's what regulates them. It's what's supposed to shackle them to stop them from overreaching their power. And it clearly says in there that they can't prejudice the people. They're not supposed to prejudice us. Well, they are. And I've been on many eviction where a friend of mine was thrown out of his house many, many years ago, left on the street, and the police all stood there on the front of his house looking around as if, they were the master Aryan race. And I thought, that's just horrible. I think a home is a right. I don't think it's a grant or a benefit from the state. And the government, in truth, they only have a use of the thing. They don't own the country. They don't own the people. But it feels that way, doesn't it?
Well, it certainly does. But I mean, I suppose I was hoping that you were coming up with some solution, and as indeed the audience were perhaps coming up with some solution that we can fight the system. But it does sound as if you're just saying it's tough. You've got to take it on the chin, lose your vehicle, lose your house, lose your kids.
There's many. So in the law and what we've studied over the years and everything that we do, I do a lot of live streaming on Facebook. We help people, we give them information. I think if the system is going to come to your house one day and they're deciding, right, okay, cool, we're going to take this, we'll take that, they will do, because they put it in compounds, they've got big steel gates, and they do treat us like slaves. They really, really do. We do get situations where people have results and the bailiffs do disappear. A friend of mine was at one Ealing a few weeks ago, and this bailiff was waving around and all paper saying, we're taking the house. And my friend said, well, we want to see the order. We need to see the order from the court that's properly signed and sealed. And the bailiff went away. He said, right, okay, I'll go away. And the eviction it didn't happen that day. But we know they've moved into the bully boy. They're bullies because they've got all the weapons. The police have got more weapons than Thor. And they want to keep taking all of the guns, our weapons, our big dogs, because they want us subdued. And then we're easy pickings, Richard, aren't we? How are you going to defend yourself? I've had the police here and I've given them the law and they're not interested. They just, we're not interested in none of that. And they just carry on regardless. And so there will be a breakthrough because necessity will dictate that at some point. We will, and we are starting to win. I think the judiciary are starting to clamp down on the police. There was a case a few years ago where Kent police trespassed and they all tell you that trespass doesn't exist anymore, and it does, because the jury found Kent Police guilty of unlawful trespass, and the two officers involved, they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that the jury of the people found them guilty of unlawful trespass. So they're a little bit more careful nowadays. So these things do work, but like I say, I think a lot of this comes down to your intent, what you're prepared to accept. There's an old saying, I'd rather die on my feet than live a life on my knees. So I think we're very polite people. I think we like to say, please.
Didn't you? I mean, you just said, I don't mean to contradict you or anything.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
You said that, okay, so if somebody says, I'm not prepared to do this, and they're coming in to take you out, I'm not prepared to you to do that. And then in order to protect himself, gets a knife and waves that about, and they go, okay, I'll go. And then you end up in prison. How has that been useful?
Yeah, no. The particular instance with the car was the guy, the clamp was on the car. He took a knife to the bailiff. The bailiff was very upset and saying, please don't stab me. I'll take the clamp off. And he did. Then the guy got sent to. I'm not saying to do that. I'm saying rule with your intent, whatever it is you're writing, put your feeling into what you're expressing, and let them know the moral side of what they're actually doing to you and how they're making you feel, and give them the points of law with the commercial law, and with, I guess, if you want to use the sort of common law that's been written and established over the years. A lot of this is to do with your intent. If you're prepared to roll over, because we like saying please and thank you, I think we as a people, we just need to find that spark within us to say, we're actually not going to tolerate this no more, individually and collectively.
Do you think they'll listen?
We're not tolerating this.
Do you think they'll listen too? I mean, they may just go, well, we don't care. Obviously they don't care, because they take little old ladies out of houses.
That's right.
They turn up. They can see that they're vulnerable. They're going after the lowest hanging fruit because they're timid and not fighting back. And so if you say, oh, I'd rather you didn't do this. This is morally wrong, and you do all this sort of weepy stuff, and they probably just laugh and go, well, we don't care, because we get the house, we get everything. And is that not a trap that you're just falling into the more you're sort of trying to point out that they're not very nice people? That they'll just go, yeah, we know we're not nice people. That's why we do the job.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I really do. We've tried for many, many years. We've had some good results and we've had some losses. I think commercially, I think the commercial law, the commercial maxims is probably the strongest form of defence that you might have. And I think that by claiming the name as the limited company, that's a powerful move.
So what do you do?
Explain
that then. What do you mean by claiming it as a limited company? You're saying you set up a business in company's house or something?
That's right. Yeah. So you just go online. You create a company in the name that is given on the certified copy of an entry, and you make it
birth certificate.
That's it. Yeah, and you just make it dormant, and it really does, because I wish I'd got a screen share up. If you go to Companies House and look at mine, it says that the director is English and he lives in England, not the UK.
Right.
And directors actually have a responsibility to protect company property, and the police, they can't just, when they know that you're doing this, because the councils, their LLPs, their limited liability partnerships, they're swindling off money left, right, and centre. And when you're the director of a limited company, whether it's active or it's dormant, you've got limited liability. You could go have a £1 million that someone's claiming, but your liability is £250, and that's all they're doing, Richard. Bailiff companies and councils, they're only hiding behind company house things that they've set up. It's a massive swindle. It really is.
But I suppose, I mean, I keep coming back to the issue. They may be hiding behind a company's house and stuff, but if they take your property and you don't have much, and they take your stuff
That's right.
for an infringement which either you didn't know or there's no victim, it's not really a crime, and it just seems outrageous or whatever it is, a parking ticket
Yeah.
that escalates out of all proportion. And then they take your stuff. Whether they're hiding behind, they can hide behind a gorilla, behind a pyramid,
That's
behind
true.
the great, whatever it is they're hiding behind. If they do
Yeah.
take your stuff, they've taken your stuff. You see, I suppose where I'm floundering is that most of the guests come on the show and give us a bit of hope. It sounds like you're saying, actually, this is the reality is, yeah, sometimes you win, but mostly you don't. And they're going to take it because they don't abide to the law, which in a show like this, I'm really looking for solutions rather than somebody saying, tough titty, they're going to get it anyway.
I get that. I fully understand what you're saying.
I don't mean
The
to be
systems
rude.
moved into no. It's fine. And we've all felt this for many, many, many years. I've helped loads of people with bailiffs. So many been on evictions. It will come down to the people. Once they're desperate, they can't function properly. They're going to have to come together because the system's turned dictatorial. I've got a policeman that lives locally, and I've been doing quite a bit of work for him. And he's leaving. He's only got a few months. He's leaving, setting up his own thing. He said he's finished. The job's absolutely terrible. He said they're all turning on each other. He said it's absolutely carnage in the police. He said, but when I was talking to him, I said, all the things you've seen. He was telling me, he goes to places with, young children. They've accidentally hung themselves or whatever. I said, it's desensitized you, hasn't it? You don't feel you've had to desensitize yourself. He said, absolutely. He said, we are all desensitized. He said, we are absolutely desensitized with what we see on a daily, weekly, hourly basis. And I guess I'm not defending the police in any way, shape, or form. I think even they know they've gone a little bit too far. When Peel set up, he come in as the peelers, and they were trying to get all that through Parliament years ago. The Lords and that at the time in Parliament, they said, we've got to be very careful this don't descend into a police state. But you can throw as much as you like at a dictator, and the dictator's not going to take any notice until you've cornered and taken the emperor's clothes off. And we the people, we're seeing it. I went 3 years ago, there was 2 million people walking around London. People are starting to work out that they need to come together. Now, we go to a local Stand in the Park group, and they're all up and down and around the countries. And they're getting so big that they're having to hire out local halls to accommodate 250, 300 people a weekend, from solicitors to farmers to plumbers to road sweepers. They're all people. Honestly, Richard, it's a good time to be alive, right? It's a really, really, really good time to be alive. And when you actually look how the system operates, let's say you're due a visit. Because the police are the elephant in the room. They're the only ones that are allowing all this tyranny to take place, handcuffs, etc., etc., etc. But if you was to organise groups all up and down around the country to say, actually, Jack's got a visit on Wednesday from a bailiff, we're going to make sure there's 100 people there, then these things won't be happening. We're seeing people having their houses taken for all this paperwork, but then they're taking their houses back themselves. And they're getting 200-300 people to turn up in the street. They take the house back. And it is sending a message to the system. I think the system knows that the people, we're getting to a point where we can clearly see what's going on. Like yourself, with what you do with your channel, it's amazing to see the comments, to see people interacting. We're all looking for the silver bullet. We are. every single one of us. But it comes down to us also as individuals to say, right, I'm prepared to tolerate this and that. And if I don't, then I'm going to vehemently defend and protect, because that's in our nature as well. Our nature is to defend and protect. We shouldn't have a situation where the state claims to own our children, claims to own our homes and our cars. DVLA, they're the finest culprit, because they never tell you the God's honest truth, do they?
No, they don't. No, absolutely. So, I mean, really, it seems that what you're saying is that we've got to come together as a people, and
Yes.
actually, the law is now no longer a thing, and
No, it's not.
it's mob rule, really. I mean, if the mobs are honourable, I'm not saying that we go around clobbering people, but you're effectively saying that the people have got to rise up and they say, we've had enough. We've had enough of you and your authority. You've overstepped the mark. We don't mind having police. It's quite useful having the police. It's quite useful having rules, because if we all drive on the left-hand side, we follow that rule. No one's going to collide with one another. It's quite useful.
Right.
But at some point, you've all gone a bit loopy, and now you've gone mad. You've gone mad, and you think that you rule the world, and you're prepared to beat each other up. And the thing that ultimately, the thing they don't realise, all of these police and these magistrates and all of these others, is that well up above them are the real Luciferians who've planted all these seeds, and these guys with the big sticks coming and visiting us and pretending to be dressed up as law-abiding elements of the law are actually also going to be done by, because you've mentioned it, bailiffs having bailiffs at their own door, and yet then they haven't twigged. Hang on a minute, I work for a bailiff society. What are you doing here? Well, I've come to take your van. No, you can't, because I've got to go and take someone else's van today, and I need that too. Tough. I've already clamped it, taken the wheels off. So in other words, we just got to get everybody to rise up and say enough is enough. Do you think enough people will do that? Do you think enough people, or have we got to wait until it gets even worse? I mean, I heard somebody emailed me in and said they got a liability order because they didn't pay the council tax, some young guy, and he committed suicide. So how many people have got to die from these stupid rules before other people go, enough is enough? I don't want anyone to die. I don't want a little old lady evicted from her house. I don't want them nicking my van, for goodness sake.
Amen. The post office scandal, that has shocked the country. People have looked at that and said, my word, this corporate system is turned into a demon. It really is turned into, I'll give great reverence to what the farmers are doing. Apparently on Mother's Day, the 10th of March in Preston, New Preston Road at 9 a.m, a friend of mine's calling for all farmers and people to turn up to do a rally there on Preston New Road in Preston. So at 9 o'clock, if you can go along, because when you actually come together, I'll never forget going on that walk around London a few years ago where there was 2 million people. I've never, ever seen so many people in my life. I was just like amazed. But actually, when we walked along the embankment, I think it is, and we walked past New Scotland Yard, the police were like statues. They weren't saying Dickie Bird to anybody, because they knew that if they did and caused any sort of a fracas, that there was no way that they could contain that.
Let me ask you this question then: if the police, if things go tits up and people do rise up and they, and the police go, oh well, hang on a minute, we better not get involved in any of this, because it's not really our fight, because it's overstepped now from our jurisdiction. Do you think then that all these people who've been invited in and come over in these funny rubber boats, these little ferries that are being put up in hotels and fed, and allegedly being given extra comforts and weapons and things like that, that they'll be the ones that will quite try and quell the uprising, because they have no skin in the game in this country?
There's a possibility that might be the case. I watched a film quite a few years ago. Rick Mayall put a lovely little film together just before he passed away called One by One. And in it, he plays this nutty professor. He's playing Jenga with a girl when they were talking about 9/11 and the towers coming down. And but at the end of the movie, there's a scene where martial law is implemented, and someone leaves the cafeteria, walks out on the street. He's actually a policeman in the film, and he gets shot dead because they're saying, "Don't come out, stay in your houses. This is martial law." And I never understood how they got to the end of the movie. Everything else checked out for me, but I just wonder whether the 1,000 policemen and women leaving the Metropolitan Police last year and just their own self-esteem within the job, they don't really like doing what they're doing anymore. I just wonder if it is to lead to that eventuality where there is some form of martial law. I don't know. There was a little bit of good news I did hear yesterday, though, that and whether you might like this or you don't, but Jacob Rothschild has actually passed away.
I did hear that, yeah. I did hear that. Unfortunately, I haven't got the sort of fireworks and celebration sound effects that that event probably ought to have. But and I dare say if I did, YouTube would shut me down.
Yes.
That is the snag. There seems to be so many things against it. So, well, the good news is that one bloke's died in one part of the world. Meanwhile, the rest of us are all stuffed because the law has taken too much of a dive, and there seems to be not a lot we can do about it until we all come together.
If they don't observe the law, the operation of the law, how the law is written, because like when this was a point I was going to make, actually I'm settling down there because I was a bit nervy when I come on here. I don't know why. I do a lot of live streaming all the time, but that's my environment, Facebook and that. And coming here today, I was like, oh my goodness, I was a bit nervous, and I'm honest about that. So
I'm nervous every day.
Amen. I've just lost my train of thought. What was I just?
Oh, sorry. There was something you were going to mention, but because you've now lost your nerve and everything's all right. Oh, there's the
everything.
bailiff.
Oh, that's it. Operation of law. Yeah, operation of law. So if, let's say the council are coming after you for, this is a nice way to look at it, actually. It's a really nice way to look at this.
Yeah.
The council are going to use the Local Government Finance Act, right?
Yeah, as they do.
And the police will use the Road Traffic Act and so on and so on. So what they're actually doing is they're picking an element of this thing they call statute law, and they're trying to clobber you over the head with it to cause you a loss, and to that's fraud, because the Fraud Act says to knowingly cause someone a loss or harm to make a gain for yourself or another. That's the definition of fraud. Even if you think it actually says it in the Fraud Act. So if they're coming at you for the council tax or the Road Traffic Act, does it mean that the rest of the statute law doesn't apply? To me, it's either all and encompassing every single statute that's written, the superior statutes, either it all applies or it doesn't. I don't understand how they just, we're going to nick you under the Road Traffic Act. Well, that's fine, Constable, but what about the act that says you can't prejudice me or steal my property? What about that? Are you going to take any notice of that one today? And they will go, we don't understand what you're saying. The law is, it comes down to words. Words, I think we're all pretty confused as people because, as you know, the word you, plural, singular, I think we're all really, as a people, confused. And we need to lose that confusion. We need to come together in groups. This is why I like to stand in the park. When you're getting 250 people coming together from all different walks of life and saying, we've had enough. We need to come up with solutions, growing food. We grow food. I grow loads of food. I live fairly off grid. I'm very fortunate to live in the beautiful Kent countryside. But, I grew up in southeast London, so I'm an hard knock boy. I know what it's like to struggle. And so many, like you said, I don't want people dying. I don't want little Mrs. Smith dying because she can't turn a boiler on. Maggie Thatcher said, she said, we are a moralist cesspit. In the 90s, she said that England is a moralist cesspit. And it's true. So that's why I try and hold these people on their morals in the police, in these energy companies, in the councils. I say, do you actually realise what you're doing to the people? Do you think it's acceptable that people are hanging themselves and killing themselves whilst you go round robbing, maiming, and stealing from them? Is that acceptable? And then all of a sudden, you start getting behind the individual of the facade. You're breaking down their barriers. I ask bailiff companies two simple questions: are we all equal in the law? No one's above the law, and they say yes. I say absolutely fabulous. And I say, do you agree we all stand under all the laws, the acts, the statutes of this country? And they say yes. And at that point, I'm in agreement with them. And when you talk about driving licenses,
and then they take your house away.
right? And the reason they're doing that is because we've signed contracts. We've signed the driver license. We've signed the logbooks, and that's all they're operating on. They're not operating on our words. They're not operating on the letters that we write to them. They throw them in the bin. They're only operating on the contracts, on the commercial element.
Yes.
That's it. They're not operating on anything else.
But even those contracts are null and void. I mean, if you follow their own rules, those contracts are null and void because they, two people didn't come together and agree on anything. They just said, this is how it is. You can't drive on the road unless you have this. So you've got to go, oh, right, okay. You registered, and half the time the manufacturer's registered, or the salesperson who sold you the car has registered the title away. So none of it's even honest. So those contracts ought to be deemed to be, or seen to be, null and void. So they shouldn't be acting on those contracts anyway, because if two minds haven't come together, if both people don't know what's in the contract, if it's not been agreed properly, then it's null and void. So what are they playing at? Oh yeah, they got bigger sticks. They've got the state. They've got the police. They've got the army. They got everything. And there's just little you who's going, yeah, but your rules are all wrong. Oh well, we don't care. We made the rules, and we'll change the rules.
It comes down to the fear element. If you've got a police car pulls up behind you with the lights, instantaneously you're going to go into that fear-based vibration. I quite a few years ago, funnily enough, I was travelling around in my van, going to a friend's house to do some work, and it was a new house he'd gone to, and a police Skoda pulled up behind me while I was trying to put the coordinates in my sat nav, and I didn't have any tax or MOT and that on it at the time, and these two policemen come up and stood alongside, and I had a very small amount of words with them, and they both, I couldn't believe it, Richard, they both got back in their Skoda and disappeared. And I actually put that video up on my Facebook channel, and that had 40,000 views in, I think, a week. Now, I'd been sending Kent Police lots and lots and lots of stuff, and their response is, well, we're going to carry on regardless, because they've got the taser sticks, they've got the guns, they've got they've got the handcuffs, and they've got the places where they can put you if they don't like what you're doing. So I think we're in a state where the law's not being observed, and it's you're going to do what we say. If not, we're going to beat you for it. And I want people to live in this country where when a policeman pulls up behind them, that they have peaceful feelings come over them, that they know that individual's not going to do them any harm,
Yes. So we seem to be going back to the same thing. I mean, in this conversation, we seem to, 1 minute it's like, oh, there's a sense that there's something good going to come out. But ultimately, what you're saying is we've all got to rise up and push back in massive numbers. Everything else doesn't matter. In the meantime, they will get away with it. They'll take your car, they'll chuck you on the street, and don't worry about that. Don't worry about cold winter and getting wet and all in that. It's perfectly fine. Just wait until everybody else is in the same boat, then we can all rise up. And that seems to be what the situation is.
Yeah. You're not lying. At least you can see it. That potentially could be the outcome. Only through necessity do we rise. The English are English, Irish, Scottish words were quite comfortable. Many people that don't pay attention. It's only when you get something happens that you question things. And it was only that interaction I had with HMRC years ago that I come out of there and I felt violated. I thought these people were public servants. I didn't realise they were bully boys, fascists. And I thought, no, I'm not having this. And at that moment in time, I thought, I don't care. There will be no fear come over me. I'm gonna stand up to these people. I'm gonna tell them how it is, regardless. And see, sovereignty. People talk of sovereignty. The only thing that you have sovereignty over is your body. You don't have sovereignty over anything else. Your cars, you just don't. And we're in a system with usage. The DVLA, you send off the logbooks, they've got the certificate of manufacturer's origin. They're always claiming that superior title, and it's wrong. Noel Edmonds, funny enough, he won a big case against Lloyd's TSB quite a few years ago, and that was literally through lack of disclosure. The TSB didn't disclose the information it ought to have had at the time, and that's how Noel Edmonds won the case. Lack of disclosure. It's the same. If someone said to you, Richard, when you passed your driving test, I don't know how many years ago, I was in the 80s. If the examiner had said to me at the time, oh, by the way, David, well done, nice one today. If we see you out on the road in the future, we might pull you out of your car, we might put jack boots on your head, we might take your car, put it in a compound. You're going to have to pay thousands of pounds to get it. But I'd have said, hang on a minute. No, I don't want no part of that. And that's the system will fall down because of its lack of disclosure. It doesn't disclose, Richard, does it?
No. I'm sitting here just thinking I may as well just slit my throat now.
No, it's not. No, it's not a case of that. It's if you don't look, we all want to have a nice life.
Because if you stand up to them, they're going to put the jack boots in, as you said, or send you to prison. If you don't do anything, they'll pull you out your car and take your gear anyway. If you just acquiesce to everything, they've bled you dry and they've won anyway, and it'll only get worse. We'll just end up in, more tyranny. We may as well just agree to the 15-minute city and eat the blooming insects and get on with it, have our heads radio. I mean, this is, I don't mean to be rude, but this does seem to be what you're saying. And basically, unless people rise up, unless it gets to the worst point in which something rather awful happens, there is nothing that we can do legally, lawfully, commercially, or anything, because they don't play by their rules. But if we try to individually or in little small groups stand up to it, they've got the infrastructure. They've already waiting for us to do it, and so we're stuffed. I mean, that does seem to be what you're saying. Is we're absolutely stuffed, and the system has been playing us like fools, and we've gone along with it, and now we're beginning to realise it. But who, not everybody wants to or is capable of standing up to it, and doesn't want to have a fist in the face or a bullet in the belly or go to prison. Some little old lady of 80 who says, well, I don't want to lose my... I mean, she doesn't want to lose her house and sit on the street and wait.
No. If you go back to the 1600s, 1688, 89...
Give me a TARDIS and I'll go back there. It sounded like a much nicer place.
If you look at 1688, 89, when that last great revolution, and you know what? For the life of me, over the years, I can't even believe that I talk the way I do, the way I feel. It was just an evolutionary process. I was a plumbing and heating engineer for many years, still am. And but I decided through how I see my country going to think, well, hang on a minute, that's not right. The police shouldn't be doing that. The council shouldn't be doing that. And I started talking to people, communicating. And I've got thousands of people that I know all up and down and around this land. Now, the glorious revolution of 1688, 89, it didn't just happen because someone one day they said, ooh, we're going to have a revolution over there because we feel like it. It would have come from necessity. It would have come from people having desperate times, not being able to function properly, not being able to eat, stay warm, etc. So it come about because the people got desperate. And this is, like I said earlier on in this stream, in the 70s, people contributed to the system because it wasn't really affecting them. They were minding their own business, enjoying their own lives, and just paying their rents and their little taxes, and it weren't overly influencing on them. But now, of course, it's a completely different animal. So when you've got people that can't perform their activities as they want to and put a smile on their face, then they're going to pay attention. And this is the point that we're at, Richard. people like yourself, people all around that are using social media, Maya Tusi, all these, Jeff Taylor. There's so many out there that are speaking out now. People are paying attention. Your numbers of your subscribers and the people are commenting and emailing you. You must be overwhelmed with it. But that you've got to smile, because that wouldn't have happened 15 years ago.
No, I know you're
15 years ago.
Yes, and I'm hoping that we can get there much quicker than it sounds like we can. However, if you go back to 1281 and the Peasants' Revolt, it didn't end well for Wat Tyler, did it? And the king promised a whole load of changes at the end of it after the peasants had gone out and burnt. Well, it wasn't really the peasants, it was more the middle classes and various people. But they again, another spontaneous revolt. They went on saying the king, the young king, who was only, 9 or 10 or whatever it was, King Richard II, he went, oh yeah, well, I promise this and I'll promise that. And they all quelled and said, oh great, we had the king was a nice bloke, wasn't he? He's only a young chap, but he seems to be a very nice bloke. And then, of course, he went back on all of that. And it wasn't quite as bad, but it never really went to what the people really wanted. And you can't help thinking that in the end, they'll just do the same. They'll just quell us enough. Oh, we won't take your car this time, but, don't be a bad boy. You do as you're told, pay your taxes, pay this, pay that, pay the other, pay that. But now, of course, they've got 5G technology. Just throw the switch. Throw the bloody switch and just radiate them all. Exactly. We don't care anymore. That's... I've lost my headphone now. That'll be the thing. It'll just be, stick another airplane up there, empty the whole bag of all that aluminium in the sky and just poison the water, for Christ's sake. Just kill them off. Kill them off. But set off the injections.
Do you not think there's an irony in that, though? Do you not think that people not paying attention and going along with the interventions, now we're seeing funeral directors saying, we can't get needles in bodies because of all these proteins that are growing inside of them. And do you know why it's growing inside the bodies? Because the body's trying to reject the spike protein.
Yes.
That's why these things are growing in the body.
Yes.
So, but the ironic thing about all this is if we all carry on knowing what we know now, knowing how vicious and violent things are getting, if we carry on putting our heads in the sand and saying, no, it's not happening, it's just going to be that little bit harder to deal with in the future. Now, what a vision I've had and what I would like to see, and maybe you might think about this after we finish the show, is that as many people as we can, we come together peaceably, we go to Downing Street or Parliament and stand these politicians down, we bring them back to the rule of law, everyone's equal again, and all this nonsense will
dissipate. And how do you do that?
How do
you do that? I mean, when you say you go to if you go there and protest, all you're doing is begging, please, will you be nice to us? Please don't be so mean. And they'll just laugh, won't they? They'll go, look at them, begging in the street, begging for us to be last. No! Switch on the 5G again. Radiate more of them.
So that is true, and protesting doesn't do anything. But up until now, no one's had any clarity on what needs to actually happen. No one's gone with any intent. No one has said, right, okay, let's get 1 million of us together. We're all smart. We go nice and peaceful. If the police put weapons up at us at the gates of Downing Street, we all have balloons of black paint in our pocket. We throw them over the gates. They get covered in paint. They can't shoot nobody. Then we knock on the door and say to everyone in there, listen, we know what you're up to. Now you're affecting my life, my kids' lives, what future they got. This is ending today. And you're back to the rule of law. And if you carry on, then we, as the people, will come back again, and we'll
be back.
You out.
And
see, and that is a very powerful thing to do, because you've done it in a way that's honourable but powerful. Nobody's died, but millions. Because the people are changing. They're not watching the mainstream no more. They can't be dealing with it. They know something really deep's going on, but they can't put their finger on it. But if we have people with intent, with vision, that can communicate with people, bring people actually together, then the world's our oyster, Richard. I mean, literally our oyster.
Funny thing is, I don't like
Literally.
oysters.
No, nor do I. Nor do I.
But
Nor do I.
I don't mind the pearl in the middle, and if we can have
Yeah,
the pearl in the middle, that would be good. We kind of run out of time, so that's really the message: is we just got to get ourselves together. We've got to
we do.
get down there in one great big, 60 million people. There's nothing they could do. 60 million people, they could shoot the first million, but by the time they've dealt with those, the next million will just keep coming. Step over the bodies. Never mind all that getting on your shoe. You get some more shoes on the way home. Yeah, just get everybody down there and say, stop it now.
They wouldn't shoot anyone, Richard, because let's just create the situation. Downing Street, as we know, back in the 1500s, was a den of iniquity, a gambling arena. That's exactly what that was, and they had the thief takers that emanated from Downing Street. They'd
Still
go out
there.
and nick. Yeah, no, they are absolutely right. They are. But if you had Downing Street covered from top to bottom with people, no matter what window you looked out at Downing Street, you see decent, nice, or anybody, people. Right, we've had enough.
Well, they're doing that in France. I mean, they've been doing that in
There you
France
go.
for a long time, haven't
There you
they?
go.
With the farmers and what have you. But what is actually happening? I mean, it doesn't end on that day. It just seems to be going on and on and on until eventually, well, let's hope something does happen.
You've got to take the head of the
I
snake
can hear the
off.
sirens. They're coming to get me already. They've realised what the conversation is, and they're coming to get you.
Yeah.
Listen, we're going to have to wrap up now, but thank you so much
Happy
for coming
days.
on and putting so much
Thank you.
positivity into the air that we're all now able to deal with everything, provided we get up and march. I mean, you're probably right. I mean, the sad thing is maybe people have been very hopeful that somebody will come on the show and say, yeah, it's all you've got to do is write a letter and it all goes away, when actually... you see, some people will say the pen is mightier than the sword, and not that you're saying the sword is mightier than the pen, you're just saying the person or the individual is mightier than any of those things in numbers.
Amen.
Because effectively that's democracy, that the right of everyone marching down and just saying, stop. It's not please stop. We're not begging you. We're not asking you. We're telling you, stop it now, or we're coming in and we will just assume the positions of... Do you want to be the Prime Minister? Yeah, you be the Prime Minister. You look like the village idiot who doesn't know very much. Yeah, okay. You be the Prime Minister, because you couldn't do a worse job. Yeah. Can we all have a free beer today? Yeah, let's have free beer. Let's just let the people go en masse. Just pull them out the seat. Sorry, mate, you've done a crap job. Go in there, sit down, and do better.
When you
When
look
you put
at
it like that does sound a bit strange. I know.
but when you look at proroguing of Parliament, they shut it down for 3 months every periodic time period, and no one really pays attention. They say, well, Parliament is closing down now till such and such a date. Nothing stops. The buses still run, the eggs and bacon still get delivered, the kids still go to school, the bankers still print this fiat monetary, the fix it again tomorrow currency. So actually, what do these parliamentarian people that are actually not supposed to do us any harm, what do they actually do? They don't do anything. We, the people, make this country work. When you look at the roads, Richard, the potholes and just what goes on. I mean, in our village, I live between Modern and Staplehurst, very quintessential, beautiful Kent countryside. There were 7 cars pulled over the other day, all broken down with flat tyres, because they've all hit the same pothole, and it's smashed their wheels up. We are deplorable. We shouldn't have these potholes. We shouldn't have this decaying system where we live in the fear. We had people in this country, judges, councils, actually that enhanced your vibration, that made you want to go out and do great in the world and to look at your brothers and sisters and say, do you know what, I love them. It might not be that kind of a love, but it's just a reverence and respect. And together, we're a great country. We can all look each other in the eye and say, we've been nice to one another. We've actually been nice to one another. We've
Well,
to
that's
get
where we've
back
got to get to,
that
Dave. That's where
spirit.
we've got to get to. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us
Yeah,
your thoughts on it. And it would be interesting to
and
see the
you.
comments. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes,
Fantastic stuff. Interesting conversation. Had me spewing and being slightly mad as part of it. That's all part of the good fun. I'll be back with more monologues and wonderful guests, of course. But until then, from Dave and I, thank you so much, Dave. Until next time, take care,
thank
look
you.
after yourselves. Bye
God
for
bless.
now.